So we got every weekday we're having new stuff live at noon. I'm going to stop sharing now so Max can share. Hey again, Max. So we're talking about presentation skills for success, Max. And most people already know me as a startup coach, founder of TorontoStarts. And I know you. We both work at a workhouse. We see each other all the time, but they don't know you. So who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Max Beaumont. I run a business called Potato Chip Communications. The name is because I love potato chips, but everything else has to do with communication skills. And I started this business with the goal in mind to help people become more confident and engaging communicators. My background is in sales and business development. So I've dabbled in the worlds of manufacturing, health food, film distribution, nonprofit. And over that time, I've had the opportunity to give thousands of presentations. And what I realized was that there was sort of a consistent formula to presentation success that I found when watching other people and doing these presentations myself. So that's sort of how my business was born, and that's what I do. I train and coach all different types of people, from lawyers to engineers to architects, and help them become more confident, engaging speakers and people who can get their messages across a lot better and more effectively. So that's what I do. So today I prepared just a very short presentation for you on essentially what I feel are the basics, the fundamentals to becoming a really good speaker. Like if you get these things down, you're setting yourself up for success when it comes to speaking to people internally, whether it's to your team, to your manager one-on-one, whether it's to prospective clients, whether it is to clients themselves, really anyone in a one-on-one to group capacity. So I've sort of distilled these points down, and I'm going to share them really quickly with you today.
Great. And if anybody has questions who's listening, feel free to open the Q&A window and ask questions. I'm having trouble with my Bluetooth keyboard typing in the typing window, but open up the Q&A window. I'll see it. Max will see it, but I'll ask at the appropriate time, or you'll cover it depending on when you're covering it. So go ahead, Max.
Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen here before. So Craig.
Yep.
Should I be sending you my presentation right now? Or
no, you should be able to share your screen. Just click the share button there and then pick whatever window you have open.
Okay. So
who can share? Yeah, you're good.
Can you see my screen?
I cannot. Anyone else?
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna.
Well, you're working on that. It's funny. We have, you remember Will Greenblatt? He's a pitch coach that works within the city. He just released a new song called Isolation Blues that he wrote a few years ago when he had his back injury. And I was listening to that today. And I was going to try and get that streaming before we got started, but I failed with the technical issues, which are continuing as we speak, I see.
Well, I'm trying to find it. So on my screen right now, I've got my PowerPoint presentation on the screen.
Perfect.
So now I'm trying to find
in the Zoom window.
So in the Zoom window.
Yeah, you should see a little bar, and there should be a green button that's like sharing.
Yeah, I'm just not getting, for some reason, the Zoom window is not popping up on my screen.
Okay, so when you're sharing, it'll be a really thin bar.
Here we go.
There you go. Hey, there we are. Now we see everything.
Okay, fantastic. So now what I'd like to do is play from the start. Can you see my face too?
Yeah, they'll be able to see your face in the corner. And when I'm not talking, they won't see me. They'll just see the presentation and you in the corner.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. And I gave a little bit of an introduction about myself, so I don't think I'm going to go over that again. But I will talk about the agenda. So the 5 things that I talked about earlier, so the fundamentals that I find to be the most important things to keep in mind when giving a good presentation, an engaging presentation, are 1, your mindset, 2, nonverbal communication or body language, 3, audience interaction. So I'm going to be going over name memory, incorporating names in your presentation, asking questions. Number 4, having a conversational delivery. So the idea of using your language and tone in a way that sounds conversational. It doesn't sound like someone is selling you something or presenting to you in a way that feels very one-sided. And number 5, lastly, is simplicity. So just talking about some ideas on how to distill down more complex ideas into simple messages that are easier to digest. And really, if you look at all 5 of these points, if you can master these, you're going to be a more engaging speaker. And for me, that's really what it's all about. When giving a presentation, if your audience isn't engaged, if they're not listening, you really don't have a shot in getting them to absorb your message. So we want people to absorb our message. We want people to listen to us. So at the very, very basic foundation, we need people listening. So how do we do that? And one of the analogies I give is, sorry, I'm just going to try to put my video up here so I can see myself too. Okay. So one of the analogies I give is your personal rope. And I think I noticed a couple people who might have been to one of my presentations before in the chat or in the participant list. And the analogy here is, we want people hanging on to every word that we're saying in a presentation. We want people engaged and we want people listening. If they're not listening, it's going to be hard for us to get our ideas across. So what I call it is our personal rope. So we want to think of ways to strengthen our rope. And the ways I talk about strengthening your rope are things that make speakers great. So you can have a moment to yourself right now and think, what are some characteristics that make a speaker great? When you think of a really good public speaker, whether it's Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Simon Sinek, Gary Vaynerchuk, what comes to mind? What qualities, what characteristics come to mind that make these people really, really good speakers? And a lot of people will come back in my seminars and they'll say, confidence, charisma, humor, relevance, being personable, vulnerability, all sorts of things. And what I say is, if you can focus on 3 or 4 things and make them really strong, your rope is going to strengthen. And as a result, people are going to be more engaged and more involved in your presentation. So just something to think about. It's just sort of my presentation philosophy when it comes to giving an engaging speech. Now, see if this works here. Okay, so really quickly, the first fundamental is your mindset. Now, I can't see anyone right now, but I'd imagine that, judging by the numbers, there's probably at least 10 people in this group who get nervous before getting up and speaking publicly. And if you read any, Craig, I see you on video shaking your head. Most people do. Most people do. And even for myself, who've given thousands of presentations, there's times where I definitely get nervous before a speaking engagement. It's normal. And it's actually known to be one of the biggest fears in the world. So keep that in mind. There is a way to channel those nerves into something positive. And this is something that I've learned over the years that's really helped me. And I feel like if you're able to put your mind in the right place before giving a presentation, that is 80% of the battle. If you can feel confident going into a presentation, excited going into a presentation, your audience will feel that. You'll feel that, and your audience will feel that. So I'm going to tell you how. I call it the helping mindset. This is something I coined, but there's a lot of people who have similar sort of strategies. I call it the helping mindset or a helping mindset. And essentially what this is you are focusing before your presentation and during, you're focusing on how you're helping your audience. As simple as that, how you're helping your audience. So you're not going into your presentation with what I call a sell mindset. So a lot of people in sales or business development, they'll go into a presentation and they'll say, I'm going in with the goal of getting 5 new prospects today or 5 new projects today, or I'm going in with the goal of getting $10,000 worth in sales in the pipeline, or whatever it is. I'm not saying that's wrong, but what I'm saying is that when you adopt a mindset going into a presentation and say to yourself, I know what I have to say is helpful to this audience, and I'm looking forward to delivering that message that is helpful, what happens is you end up being received much better by your audience. And in turn, the results are much greater yourself. So I'll give you a couple examples moving forward, but focus on how you're helping your audience. And when I say that, it's because when you're helping, when you legitimately get into a mindset of helping, you feel like you should be there. A lot of the times when we're giving presentations, we feel uncomfortable because we might feel that there's people in the room who have more knowledge than us, or we feel like there's people in the room that might not accept our message. But if you can genuinely believe that what you're saying is helpful, you're going to feel like you should be there. You're not going to feel like you don't have a place there, and you'll want to get up and speak to people. So one of the analogies I use is if you had $10,000 given to you, but that $10,000 was earmarked to give to someone else who needed that money, you wouldn't have any problem picking up the phone and calling that person who needed the money. So this is just an analogy. Most of us, this isn't going to happen. But the idea is, if you know you have something that will help someone, whether it's money or a message that can help make them money or help give them comfort or help provide them stability, or perhaps you're pitching an idea to someone who might take that idea, pitch it to their boss, and that can help them themselves get promoted. Like, if you have an idea or a message that you genuinely feel can improve someone's life or help their situation, you're not going to have a problem picking up that phone. You're not going to have a problem getting in front of those people, pitching that message and talking to them. So the science behind this is pretty interesting. Knowing that we're helping, and the act of helping produces positive hormones in our brain. And it's one of the reasons that there's a lot of studies that show we're happier when we give gifts, when we spend money on other people, than when we spend money on ourselves. It's a lot of the reason why people volunteer. Yes, it is a selfless act, but it feels good. It feels good to volunteer. It feels good to help. And what the science shows is that oxytocin, serotonin, these chemicals in our brain, these positive hormones in our brain, they're released. We feel good. We get energy. And what the science shows with good speakers is that if you have energy, if you're feeling good, there's something called mood contagion, or in the scientific community, they call it mirror neurons. And essentially what that means is that our mood is contagious. And the reason that is because we are mirroring the neurons in other people's brains when they're speaking. And there's lots of there's a study done at Harvard University where they put high energy people in a room with low energy people, and the low energy people came out of that room much more high energy, just being in a room with someone who had that. So it's why we laugh more when we're in a movie theater as opposed to when we're by ourselves at home watching Netflix. Laughter is contagious. You've heard that before. You've been around people who, when they're in a dark mood or they're sad or they're angry, we can feel it. Like, mood really is contagious. So when you develop this mindset where you're helping someone, your audience is going to be impacted by that. And I found that to be very true throughout my entire career. So lastly, about mindset, this is just sort of an interesting study. This was done at a call center at the Michigan State University. There's a gentleman, it's a popular social psychologist. His name's Adam Grant. And what he did was he went into this call center. And this call center, their goal was to call alma mater, so former Michigan State University students, and ask for money. And for those listening, you might be able to relate to this. I went to Ryerson University. I know the number off by heart now, 416-979-5000, because they call me every few months, not anymore because of what's going on, but they've called me, multiple times throughout the years, asking for money, asking for donations. This is what this call center does. This is their goal. So this guy, Adam Grant, went in to see if he could change how they thought before making those calls to their their graduate students, if he could increase the amount of pledges they got. So what he did was he split the call center into 3 teams. One was the control team, so the control group, nothing changed. 2 was the personal benefits group. So this group was reading all the personal benefits about working at a call center before making their calls and making their pitches to raise money from students. The 3rd group was the task significance group. This was the group that was reading letters about how the money they raised was helping the people that actually got the money. Like this money would go towards grants, helping people in need with tuition. Anyways, what he found out was that the 2 first groups, the control group and the personal benefit group, nothing changed when they made their calls. And keep in mind, all the scripts were the same. The only thing that was different was 5 minutes before them reading different things. And what he found was the task significance group, the group that was reading all the benefits that people were getting from the actual money that was being raised, went up almost by 3. So nothing changed with the other groups, but the group that was simply read messages about how they were helping their audience was able to raise their donations per week from just under $1,300 to over $3,000 to over $3,100. And that was just from changing their mindset around what they were doing. All the scripts were the same. So the point of this whole message is, if you adopt this helping mindset, not only will you feel better, not only will you develop more energy and more passion and more confidence, but what happens is the result is a lot better as well. Your audience receives your message a lot better. And as a result, you are, raking it in. You're being impacted as well. So just to sort of conclude this section, my mantra, this is a mantra that I use before going into my presentations. I sort of repeat it in my head until I believe it. I can't wait to tell you what I know because I know it's going to be helpful to you. And if you genuinely believe that, you're going to be set up for success in the mindset department. And just some takeaway questions for whoever's listening. The way that I tackle my presentations is I'll generally answer these 3 questions, 20 minutes, 30 minutes before a presentation or a day before a presentation, just to get my mind in the right place. So if I can confidently answer, how is my message helping my audience? Why is that important to them? And what is my audience losing out on from not hearing my message? If I can really answer these questions and believe them, then I know I'm setting myself up for success. Like, I want to be excited going into a presentation. If you can genuinely believe that your audience is losing out on not hearing from your message, you're in a good place. You're in a good place. And I've talked to a lot of different people who have a lot of different messages. So it could be as simple as talking to a manager, bringing them up to speed on a report. What happens if your manager doesn't hear that message? Well, they might not be able to complete their work as efficiently. It could be as simple as that. So you are bringing a message that's helping them become more efficient in their work. You are bringing them a message that if you didn't bring them this report, they could get in trouble with their boss. So there's all these different ways you can conclude that make you believe and understand that what you say is valuable. So you need to believe that. Anyway, so that sort of concludes that section. I can open it up to a question.
Yeah, I really like how you talk about mood contagion. It's so true, and it affects everybody. And people need to be aware of it for many reasons. One, I believe people don't buy on cold cognition; they buy on hot cognition. So people are they buy on desire, passion, not necessarily cold hard numbers. So when you can talk about, when you can control that mood contagion a little bit to get the room feeling good, your chance of success go way up.
Totally.
Plus, I think you're authentic. If you're actually thinking about knowing how you're helping people and you're approaching that situation that way, and that's fresh in your mind, you come across as being authentic because that's what you are, because that's how you feel.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that's just authenticity is far better received. Like, I think about, when you go into like a retail store, when we did go into retail stores, and retail employees would come up to us right away and try to sell us on something. Like, our instinct is to sort of back off, even if they're just saying hi. Our instinct is to say that's okay. I sort of think of that from a presentation standpoint. When you go in, when people can, our audiences are smart. Like, they can sense when we're, trying to sell them something. But if you're coming from a place where you have that excitement and energy and authenticity, people are going to be a lot more receptive to hearing you. The walls won't be as high. People won't be as guarded. So.
Absolutely. And, being yourself, I found that we talked about nervous and getting that mindset. I've done, I don't know, I can't even begin to count how many events I've spoken in front of now. It's just crazy. Like you said, thousands. It's probably up there for sure. And I still get nervous, but at the same time, you're there for a reason. Sometimes I'm there to teach, people want to learn. Sometimes I'm there to speak on a topic. Sometimes I'm just running the event, like Startup Drinks. And so I'm just trying to impart a little bit of information and get, the startups up here and get them relaxed and get them in the right place. So when they see me coming up and relaxed and, and I'm in awe a little bit and I'm funny in front of the group, everyone relaxes and then they can pitch and do that. It's for me, I try to make that out of the gate to get everyone relaxed and get everyone connected. It does help at Startup Drinks that, people can have some drinks. So how do you get people relaxed when you're getting the start to, you're walking into a room cold,
Yeah.
and you have this mindset and you want this mood contagion, but you're up against the mood contagion of the room. How do you make your mood more contagious than the room?
Yeah. I mean, you're the reason why people have come to that room. So, it's on you to, so there's a couple things to answer that question, but ultimately, as you go through your presentation, the idea is, the way you're delivering this message in a helpful way, like that you're excited to share this information that's going to help them, that eventually is going to be contagious. But I like to, establish a little rapport before going into a presentation. I always get there early, make sure to shake hands, try to, remember everyone's name, maybe ask a couple questions before, just general questions before giving a presentation. Like, I used to work for a company called Big Ass Fans. And, I'd ask people, has anyone heard of Big Ass Fans before? Have you seen them before? Where have you seen them? Just to sort of loosen it up a little.
Yeah, it's one of the tricks I used to do in board meetings is when people were going around the room, I'd write the names. I'd already have drawn out like a seat map on a piece of paper, and I'd write the name of everybody in their seat location as they went around the room, so it was easy to refer to later.
Right. I still have some more slides, by the way.
I'm happy to let you go. Sorry.
No. I just wanted to let you know, just in case. I wasn't sure if you thought I was finished, but
nope. I just wanted to talk about contagion because I didn't want to lose that.
No. I'm happy to chat as much as you'd like. Okay, cool. All right, let's see here. So I know I can't see anyone or hear anyone right now. I noticed there are about 13 participants on Zoom. I'm not sure how many on other platforms, but I'd be curious to know. I actually think I recognized a couple names, Matt Lyons and Heather Sansom, I believe. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I'm pretty sure that I came into your office before. Either way, what do you think the communication formula consists of? I'll sort of ask this hypothetically because I can't hear anyone, but the communication formula is essentially the formula that makes up communication. There are three things that make up the communication formula. This was developed by a psychologist and a psychology professor at UCLA. His name is Albert Mehrabian. And he said that when we're communicating with each other, we're essentially judging each other based on three things. What are these three things? I will tell you. Words, tone, and body language. So when we're communicating with each other, these are the three things that we're assessing. We're constantly judging people subconsciously or consciously on whether we like them, whether we trust them, whether we think they're competent. Okay. Now, what Dr. Morabian did was he allocated, through a series of tests, he allocated the percentage of importance to each one of these three characteristics. Now, I'd be curious, take a moment. What do you think is most important, or I should say, we rely on the most when we're judging a speaker or a communicator on whether we trust them or whether we feel that they're competent or knowledgeable?
Well, my guess would be body language. It's either that or tone, depending on how much you're paying attention.
Right. That's a good.
We have someone in the chat room saying words are only 10%. Oh, here we go.
Oh, well, David Hurst, you're not too far off here. One second, let me. I'm going to close the chat here. Yeah, good guess. Words. I mean, you take this with a little bit of a grain of salt, you give or take a few percentage here and there, but the overarching idea is that body language and tone make up the majority of the communication formula. And that's not to say words aren't important. Of course they're important. But when all three of these things aren't in congruence with each other, what we as humans tend to believe are people's tone and body language. So if I go up to Craig and I shake Craig's hand and I say, "Nice to meet you, Craig," but when I say "nice to meet you," I say it in a monotone voice and I'm not looking at him. I say, "Nice to meet you, Craig. Nice to meet you."
Hey, whatever.
I said, my words communicated that it was nice to meet him, but Craig knows that I didn't mean it with my body and my tone. So he's going to most likely decide that my actions were not pleasant or not nice or not trustworthy or whatever it is. So the point of this is to remember that when you're giving a presentation, it's not necessarily what you say, but a lot of it is how you say it and how you present it. So again, just to reaffirm the last point, if this gentleman said, "I'm so confident right now," that's not necessarily in congruence with how he looks. So what we're going to do is we're going to tend to believe their body language or their tone. It's the same thing with, if anyone's living in quarantine with anyone right now, if your partner says they're fine, a lot of the time we can tell whether they're actually fine, and that's based on their tone and their body language. So body language for me, that makes up gesturing, facial expressions, eye contact, and body posture. Now, I'm not sure how long we'll be giving presentations over Zoom, but body language still comes into play. So how should we carry ourselves when we're speaking? It's just sort of a really quick analogy. How did angry teenagers stand? They're usually distribute their weight on one foot. They usually have their arms crossed and they're looking down. That's not what we want to do. We want to have open body language. And the reason we want to do that is because it shows that we're confident in our message when we're open. And it also shows that we care about our audience. We're not stuck up. We want to engage our audience. And that means everyone in the room. If there's a room full of 20 people, we want to make sure that we're engaging everyone. And that's the point of having open body language. So the simplest way for me to break it down is open versus closed. When you're speaking in front of a group, just be aware of your body language. Am I open? Am I showing that confidence in my message? And am I showing an interest in my audience? And those are the two things that I found to be really successful amongst impactful speakers. So open versus closed. And there's a lot of evolutionary psychology behind this. And it's part of the reason why people think public speaking is one of the scariest things in the world, is because our hunter and gatherer brains, this is an evolutionary psychologist perspective, our hunter and gatherer brains, when we're up speaking to a crowd, that crowd are the predators. And there's nothing in front of us to protect ourselves from these predators. That's what our old brain is telling us. So we tend to want to close up. Our instinct is to close up, maybe put our shoulders down a little, maybe cross our arms, maybe put our hands in our pockets, we're scared to be vulnerable. We're scared. We're in fear. So it's the same thing when you're speaking to a group. We have to show that confidence through our open body language. And I think one of the best ways to do that is through eye contact. Making eye contact with people, I think, is just a really good, genuine way to connect with people, to show you're confident in your message, to show that you care. And if you're speaking to a very large audience, let's say they're, over 100 people or 100 people even, what I like to do is section off the audience and make sure that I'm making eye contact in that vicinity throughout the presentation. So if I'm breaking that audience into, 10 to 15 different sections, I want to make sure that I'm connecting with all those 10 to 15 different sections throughout the presentation. So you can do that with the larger groups. But, if you're in a group of 20 people, you can certainly make eye contact with everyone, assuming your presentation's more than a minute. And here's an interesting point about gesturing, because people ask me a lot of the time. They ask me a lot, is gesturing good? Or, I come from an Italian background. Should I'm used to gesturing so much. Is that bad? So here's the stats on gesturing. There's a woman, she's a social psychologist, you can call her. Her name's Vanessa Van Edwards. She's pretty popular on YouTube. And she wanted to find out what one of the common denominators were between successful TED Talkers and non-successful TED Talkers. So TED Talks are approximately 18 minutes. And what she found out was that the most successful, the most popular TED Talks, the speakers, they gestured twice as much as the least popular TED Talks. So the most popular TED Talkers, I think it was around, give or take this number, was around 480 gestures per 18 minutes. And amongst the least popular TED Talks, it was about half of that. And what she concluded was that when people were gesturing, it showed confidence in their message. They were confident in what they were saying, as opposed to people who had their hands at their sides. They seemed a little more timid, and they didn't seem as confident and as energetic and as sure in their message. That was one of the conclusions the studies came to. The second thing was when you're gesturing, what you're doing is you're also painting a visual representation of the words that you're saying. Sometimes you're reinforcing your words through a visual image. And what you're doing is you're giving that extra opportunity to your audience for them to engage with you. Just in case they didn't comprehend everything through your words and your delivery, then maybe that 2 or 3% of that audience can catch the rest of your message through your gesturing. Now I'll give you an example. This is actually a slide from one of my older presentations at Big Ass Fans. And when I gave this presentation, I would say something like this. I would say, there's 2 big fans on the ceiling. There's 1 trunk of ductwork on the right side of the building. And those 2 fans are used to mix that air throughout that space. But when I gave the presentation, I would say, there's 2 big fans on the ceiling. It's a little weird because we're doing this through video, but there's 2 fans on the ceiling. There's 1 trunk of ductwork on the right side of the building. And those 2 fans on the ceiling are used to mix that air evenly throughout the entire space. So that was the difference. The second example was with gesturing. And most people would probably get the message through my words, but because I want to make sure that everyone has that message reinforced, and because I want to make sure everyone gets what I'm talking about, the notion, what it means, how it looks, I want to make sure that I'm incorporating every tool I can to make sure people understand my message.
Yeah, I also find, sorry for jumping in, when you gesture, you look more, when your tone and your gesturing and your body, your facial expressions are in alignment, you're authentic.
Yes.
You're like, you're into it. You're passionate about what you're doing. You're showing your energy, your honesty, and your authenticity. If you are tight, people say that as see that not only as not confidence, but maybe that you're not authentic. You're not aligned with what you're saying.
Totally. Now, I would. Yeah, and
potential feedback point. Sorry, we had someone in the chat room say, gesturing is a potential feedback point because you can get your audience involved as well.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Now, I wouldn't say that you should be consciously thinking, oh, I need to gesture here, I need to gesture here. What I think the point is don't be afraid to gesture. If it feels natural to you, then do it. That's sort of the overarching point. So that concludes that section. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to chat them or.
I think we jumped in on you there. Sorry, I should have waited.
No. It's all good. It's all good.
Oh, here we go. You notice that your slides have written content on the left and the pictures on the right. Is there a benefit to that layout? To have pictures to the left, for the brain to process the written material on the right. Do you follow the F pattern for English speakers for brain processing? And is that why your slides are set up that way?
No,
Okay.
I have no idea. It was easier for me to absorb. But, I just, my whole goal with giving presentations and slides is just minimal words on the screen. Like, you're the presenter, you want to be the person that your audience is listening to. You're the person that they should be paying attention to. Like, you're the person that's going to get them to absorb your idea. It's not the slides. The slides can help. The slides will aid you, and they should be there as an aid, but they shouldn't dominate your presentation. But to answer your question, no, I don't know the psychology behind words on the left, pictures on the right. I just work well for me.
So from a comprehension point of view and a website standard point of view, you want your call to actions to be on the right-hand side of the page because it takes your brain that time to process. So that's why I think it's pictures on the left and text on the right actually follows that.
Cool. Was there another chat?
No, he's just saying minimalization of words. The presentation should not exist without you.
Totally. Thanks, David. Yeah. Cool. All right. So moving forward to audience interaction, names and questions. So you can do this on your own. We're gonna do a quick name memory exercise in a minute, but I really think that this is remembering names is like a secret weapon. If you can get really good at remembering names, which I know everyone can get good, and there's probably a lot of people in this chat, including me a few years ago, who said I'm not good with names, but I'm good with faces. I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm more of a face person, not a name person. But I don't have a great memory by any means. I would say I have an average memory. But what I've done is I've made it a priority to remember names, because when I had to give all these presentations, and I still do, but when I was working in sales and business development and doing presentations on a daily basis, I realized how valuable it was to remember people's names for a variety of reasons. But for the sole reason of being a more engaging speaker, it helps so much. And it's just such an unbelievable tool, not just for presentations, but for life. And Dale Carnegie, one of my favorite authors of all time, he said, it was one of his quotes, remember that a person's name is that person, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And what I take away from that is, and I'll give you an example, Craig, even, in our workspace, I met someone a couple months ago, really, really briefly. And then I saw them later in the kitchen, like 3 hours later. And they said, hey, Max, how's the day been? And I was caught off guard. I was a little surprised. I was like, oh, we spoke for literally 30 seconds. Did not think that you remembered my name, but you said it back to me and it felt good. And I think for me, at its core, good communication skills comes down to showing interest, showing care for others. And I think remembering people's names is a clear sign that shows that you care, that you've taken the time to listen and remember maybe the only thing that you know about that person upon first meeting. Especially in a sales presentation, if you're going into a cold room, you don't know anything about these people, you're shaking hands. If you can remember the one thing they told you, wow. For me, it's like a quick path to establishing rapport. So I think it's a genuine way to connect with someone, as I said in this slide. So The number one thing that you need to do is to shift your mindset. Yes, you can be good at remembering names. It's not something that is only given to people with exceptional memories. You can do it. You just need to make it a priority. And just like anything else, these are the 4 steps, but just like anything else, step number 1 is having a why. You know, why should I remember someone's name? And once you recognize the importance of it, whether it's being a better communicator, showing people that you care, being better in your sales presentations, being a better, whatever it is, you know, making people feel good, you know, whatever it is, have a why, understand the importance of it, make it a priority, and you will be better. And then the next steps to follow are being present, because a lot of the time, if I meet someone or we meet someone, it's just a formality. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Max. Nice to meet you, Craig. Okay. And then you're not present. It's just, you're thinking about other things. You're thinking about the next question you'll ask them. You're thinking about, you know, what you're having tonight for dinner, whatever it is. So be present during that time. This goes into the previous point, making it a priority. That's what's most important in your world, is remembering their name. Repeat the name out loud. So a lot of the time you might not hear the name properly. You might not know how to spell it. It might be, you know, unclear. So you want to A, confirm that you got the name correctly, and B, more importantly, imprint it in your brain. So Craig, it was Craig. Nice to meet you, Craig. Say it once. And then in my head, what I'll generally do is I'll repeat it 2 or 3 times. That's Craig. That's Craig. You know, just to sort of implant it in my brain. And that really, really helps. And I give presentations now. I would say on average, the average size group is probably 16 to 20 people. And I would say 90% of the time I'm remembering everyone's name. And that's not because I have an exceptional memory. I just know that it's important, and I make it a priority.
My limit's about 20 when for those types of things. And yeah, I also find just keep using their name. There's no reason not to. If you're teaching or make a presentation, you could say, oh, like Susan over here, blah, blah, blah. Or like John, say he is into soccer. And, you know, you use the example of people around your room, just use their names, because now it's ingraining it in your memory. You're also making those connections with the people in the room.
Totally. I was going to get someone to give me a testimony here, whether it's Heather or Matt. Just looking at the participant, let Heather or Matt. I believe I believe you work at Pattison, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But just so you know, I'm not BSing.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you've seen Matt speak, let's throw some comments here. And I've worked with him a bit. What's next there, Matt?
Okay.
Max.
We got to chat. Yeah. No, David, for sure. You can, my limit is about 2, but I am including myself in that count. Yeah, no, it goes such a long way. It goes such a long way. So keep these steps in mind, make it a priority. What we're going to do now is we're going to get ready to remember some names. So this is your priority. You're going to repeat the name out loud, as silly as that might seem, by yourself. You're going to repeat the name out loud, and then you're going to say it in your head a couple times. So I'm going to show you a face. I'm going to say, this is blank, and you're going to say, nice to meet you, blank. All right, here we go. All right, this is Matt.
Nice to meet you, Matt.
This is Lisa.
Nice to meet you, Lisa.
This is Amar.
Nice to meet you, Amar.
This is Patricia.
Hey, Patricia. Nice to meet you.
This is Steve.
Oh, you're really challenging me now. Hey, Steve. I'm not going to remember anybody else. Nice to meet you.
You got it. Okay. All right, everyone. Who's this?
Ooh, crap. Come on, chat room. Gonna help me out here. I hear Lisa.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, nice. Both of you got it. Who's that?
I'm gonna say Amar. Yeah. Oh, the chat room got it too. Good. Oh yeah. Look at it.
Nice.
I'm not gonna speak anymore because I don't want to. Okay, we got a couple people in the chat. One so far.
I like it. It's all Craig. You're busy monitoring the room, so
Yep. I remember. Yay.
that's
Oh,
Steve. That's Steve. You got it. David, did you get all 5 there?
I think he skipped one.
4 so far.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Who's that?
Yes.
Nice, Patricia. This is just a random Google image, so I'm not sure if she's available, David, but Patricia, yeah. So okay, so it looks like the ones who commented on the chat, I mean, got 4 or 5 out of 5, and that's good. That's a good start. And the reason this activity might seem easy to you is because you actually tried to remember their names. Now, I think it arguably is even easier in person when the person's moving and there's more to distinguish. So good stuff. Any questions about that?
All's quiet so far. I think they got the memory thing.
Awesome. Cool. So that is that. Yes. Okay. So yes, now you remember their names. Now it's about making that's the first step. Now it's about making your audience a partner in your presentation. Now, remembering their names, now picture yourself talking to 10 people, 12 people. You are going to feel a lot more confident if you know everyone's name. You will feel a lot more confident. It's going to be a lot easier to engage with people. And it just changes the dynamics of the room. So when we talk about mood contagion or just comfort in a room, if you know people's names, it feels automatically more human. So make your audience a partner in the presentation. So right off the bat, if you're having a conversation with someone before your presentation starts, and you say during your presentation, you point to one person in your audience and you say, well, we shouldn't point, but we look at someone in their audience and we say, he was saying that he was watching this Netflix show earlier. That doesn't sound very personal. Now that we remember people's names, we can incorporate them. We can make this presentation more personal. Steph, I was chatting with Steph before the presentation, and she was saying that, she was watching, Breaking Bad reruns, whatever it is. So you can start doing that. And now we can incorporate asking questions. So asking questions, they are a tool to engage your audience, essentially. Instead of it just me the whole time speaking to my audience, which I'm doing now. But instead of doing that, what we can do is ask questions to break it up, make it feel like more of a conversation. And that doesn't necessarily mean to engage in a back and forth dialogue, back and forth. What that means is it's just giving your audience a break. And it's also giving an audience a chance to think about something, just in case they're, in a lull or they've tuned out. What you can do is bring them back in with a question. And these questions don't need to be complex. They can be as simple as the example I used before, which was, has anyone heard of big ass fans before? A simple yes or no question to keep people engaged. So it's also a way to feel out the room. So like I said, so you can speak with your audience. So the example that I give, this is just one. If I went to a group of people and we're talking about presentation skills and I say, who here gives presentations to audiences over 10 people? And at the beginning of the presentation, I can sort of gauge to see how many people raise their hands or nod their heads. And then later in the presentation, when I bring something like this up, I can say, okay, so for those of you who give presentations to over 10 people, and then I'm looking at the people who were engaged earlier, or I can say, for those of you, Steph, Matt, Craig, Rob, Matt, who mentioned that they give presentations to over 10 people, you can do this, this, or this. So what I've done now is I'm bringing people into my presentation. And if you hear your name called, you can't not pay attention. If someone says my name during a presentation, I'm paying attention. I've got my head up, I'm looking. So that's one thing. These questions, like I said, they should be relevant to your talk, but very easy to answer. Yes or no. It's funny that I think that there's two people in this chat from Pattison, and I did a presentation with them maybe a year and a half ago. I did a seminar at their company, and I think this was the example that I used. One of the examples that I used was, the question could be as simple as, does anyone take the TTC to work? Does anyone take a TTC to work? That's just a yes or no question, just that's relevant to your talk, a way to warm up your audience or to bring them back in. And then once people have acknowledged a yes or no, then you can engage them. And it doesn't have to be a serious engagement. It can just be an acknowledgement. Oh, Matt, you take the TTC to work? Great. Oh, Sophia, you take it? You don't take the TTC to work? Oh, you do? What station do you get on at? Just really simple, just a way to humanize and personalize your presentation that makes it feel a lot more authentic and conversational. And I think this helps a lot. So I would encourage you to think of some general questions throughout your presentation that are relevant to your talk and really easy to answer. And that's it. So I can say, hey, Craig, have you heard of Big Ass Fans before?
Only from you, my friend.
Okay. When do you remember when I told you about them?
I think not the last time you gave a presentation.
Okay. Awesome. It could be as simple as that. Or if Craig said yes, I can say, well, where did you see them? It's just really simple. It's not a way to try to elicit information in a sales way from your audience. It's just a way to keep them engaged, make it more human, make them a part of your conversation.
So for those people who have a hard time remembering names, does tying a person's name to qualities help you remember?
So from my experience and my strong belief is that I believe it makes it more confusing because now you have another thing to remember. So instead of just remembering Max, this is Max. Now this is Max with the beard or, with the striped shirt. You have to remember striped shirt and beard. Like, I just think what you're doing is you're adding elements that extra elements that need to stay up here, which I find make it harder, in my opinion. So if you really just make it a priority to remember the person's names, look at them, take them in, say the name out loud, say it in your head a couple times, it will stay with you. Yeah, and try to use them throughout the presentation, and that's going to help make it stick too. So next, sort of going into audience interaction, is a conversational delivery. My belief, and I agree with this gentleman who's a famous speech coach, presentation skills coach. He's coached a number of TED Talks, really great speaker himself. It's not a performance, it's having a conversation and being yourself. Much like Craig was saying earlier, it's about that authenticity. And part of that is using language that you would use normally, is having conversational language. It's not trying to spark up your language or to make yourself sound more intelligent. It's the reason we use language that we use every day is because we listen to language that we're used to hearing. And if the point is to engage our audience, we want to say things that they're used to hearing, that they're familiar with. And the more familiar they are with the language and the tone, the more likely they are to listen to what we have to say. So, one of the questions I ask myself is, does it sound like my own words? And if I'm not, when I'm practicing a sales presentation or I'm practicing a presentation, often I'll have a conversation about a point or multiple points with my brother or my mom or a close friend. I want to practice it conversationally. This is how I speak to my family. This is how I want to speak to my audience. And, one of the examples I've given in the past, this is some of the messaging I've heard from a company I used to work with, is I'd like the team to be cognizant of the inception date before disseminating the documentation. Now, from my experience, 33 years on this earth, I haven't heard people really speak like this. And so, just another way of saying this is, I'd like you all, I don't need to say you guys, but I'd like you all to be aware of the start date before you hand out the materials. It's the exact same message. We're just using language that we'd actually use. So that's the point of that. Back to Dale Carnegie. one of the things I talk about as well when we're talking about using language and conversational language is being specific about certain things. I think that adds another human element to your presentation. So instead of saying, this is just one example, I took my car to the store. If you're this is for people who live in Toronto. I took my car to the Shoppers Drug Mart at Don Mills and Lawrence. And what we're doing here is we're allowing people to get a visual representation of us to say, hey, this speaker is human, just like me. They've been to Shoppers Drug Mart. I know Shoppers Drug Mart. I've been to Don Mills and Lawrence a couple of times. I've been to that intersection. What that does is it humanizes ourselves to our audience. And it also allows for our audience to piggyback on our conversation and just get a better visual idea of our message.
Parking's atrocious there.
Yeah. Is it? I think that I just use this as an example because I think I did a presentation.
Fair enough.
Is it though? Yeah. And it's the same thing that was saying, I went out for dinner last night, or you can say I went to this really good pizza place at Bathurst and Bloor, called Pico, and it just allows people to be more engaged in the conversation. You can use this with professional examples too, like speak to the examples specifically of the work that you've done or the things that you're doing, like say things that are familiar to people. We just helped this is just an example of a company I work with, but we helped a construction company in Markham who wanted to grow their social media account, specifically their Instagram, to 10,000 followers. Now there's multiple things that we can relate to in this message in our brain, but it also paints a clear picture of the work that we've done. Like we want to be specific with the things that we've done, not only to personalize it to our audience, but to help them get an idea of what we do. So just really quickly about tone. I think this is a stat that I saw recently that the worst characteristic of a public speaker is a monotone voice. And if anyone has kids or if anyone's read stories to kids before, what do we do when we read stories to kids? We're up and down with our pitch patterns. And the reason we do that is because we want them to be excited. We want them to be engaged. Now, we might not have the exact same tone as we're using to kids as we are to adults, but the idea remains the same. We want them to be engaged. So we want to change our pitch patterns. We want to make it conversational. We want to make it engaging. So if you feel excited about your message, if you feel like your message is helping, what's going to happen is you're going to carry on that excitement to your audience and you're going to talk about it in a conversational way. And so we just need to be aware of that. And we need to be aware that if we focus on certain words, we can really change the meaning of our message and emphasize certain things that are really important to that point. So in this example, usually when I'm with a group, I'll get people to run through these sentences, emphasizing the underlying word. I never said she stole the money. I never said she stole the money. I never said she stole the money. Our sentences are completely different. The meaning of our messages are different based on the words that we emphasize. So tone plays a crucial role in the delivery of what you're saying. So my advice, and I sort of alluded to this, but when you're practicing your presentation, I always say, don't try to remember the material word for word, but know your material really well, know your talking points really well. And if you have a slightly different version every time, that's okay. If there's slight words that are different, that's okay. What's more important is how you deliver it. And that's really the most important part. And if you can remember it well, then, if you can practice it with people that are close to you and have a conversation with them about it, then that's a good way to practice. So lastly, we'll get into just simple messages. One of my favorite speakers of all time, Simon Sinek, talks about, if you have a simple message, ideas that are easier to understand, they're going to be more likely to be repeated. So one of the examples I give is if you're in a sales discussion with a group of people, but not all the influencers or decision makers are in that room, we want to have a message that's simple enough for our people in the room that are listening to us to take back to those other decision makers. So when they say, hey, Craig, tell me about that presentation that you sat in. Tell me about it. What did you learn? You want to make sure that your message is simple enough for that person to listen, remember, and pass it on. So ideas that are easier to understand are more often repeated. And if you think of some of the most popular slogans or messages in the world, like "I'm loving it," "Just do it," "I have a dream," Martin Luther King, these are messages that are easy to understand. They're more often repeated. So yeah, so I would definitely encourage that. The other thing is our attention spans, especially now with how much we're on our phones, have gone down significantly. There's a book by a gentleman, his name is Joseph McCormick. It's called Brief, and he talks about attention spans and how we've gone down, humans have gone down from 12 seconds, attention span of 12 seconds, which isn't very long to start with, in 2000 to 2018, I believe. We're now at 8 seconds. 2020 now, so it might be even lower, maybe 7.5. I don't know. This is just a funny graphic that shows that our attention spans are lower than a goldfish's attention span, which is not a great sign. But the idea here is that because our attention spans are short, we want to get the point across as quickly as we can. And if you confuse people with your message, if it's not simple enough, what's going to happen is you're going to be losing a lot of people. That doesn't mean you need to dumb down your point. What it just means is the point of communicating, I think, is for people to understand and absorb your message. And if you have an important message to say, it's important that you're able to articulate it in a way that most people can understand. So there's something that a lot of us, if we're in a tech heavy industry or a acronym heavy industry, where we suffer from something. I see a couple of chats pop up. So Craig, if you wanted to stop for a minute. You're on mute there.
Yeah. Sorry, keep going. I just posted where this video will be. The recording is going to be posted tomorrow so that people can grab that link.
Yeah, of course. The curse of knowledge is essentially this. It's essentially saying that it's essentially assuming that our audience knows that what we know. That's what it is. So if we're so consumed in our worlds, like I talk to a lot of lawyers. I do a lot of seminars for lawyers, and they're very wrapped up in their world, just like we all are. Marketing professionals, architects, engineers, we have our acronyms, we have our way of speaking. So we forget sometimes that our audience isn't necessarily privy or knowledgeable of what we're talking about. So that's called the curse of knowledge, is assuming your audience knows what you're speaking about. And they wanted to test this out. And the way they tested this out was they did these studies at Harvard, which I usually do with a group of people, where you have people get into partners, and there's a tapper who's tapping songs to their partner. And the partner is obviously just listening to those songs. And the listener has to try to figure out what their partner is tapping. It's a really easy song. So one of the songs, for example, would be Happy Birthday. So you're tapping out Happy Birthday to you, okay? So what Harvard found was that 2.5% of listeners, not a high percentage of listeners, guessed the songs, guessed the actual, they were correct in guessing the songs that their partners were tapping. But here's the interesting stat. 50% of the tappers thought the listeners would guess the songs that they were tapping. So there's a huge discrepancy there. And that, for me, is the curse of knowledge in action. We're the tappers. In our head, we know Happy Birthday. We assume that our audience is going to know what we're tapping, what we're thinking, what we're humming in our head. But in reality, it sounds like, Morse code to a lot of the people on the receiving end. So that's the same thing when we're giving presentations about what we're experts in or what we're consumed in. So it's important to take a step back and recognize that. And one of the things that I say is, can a 14-year-old understand it? Or depending on your industry, you can say, can a 16-year-old understand it? Or would my mom's friend, or would my cousin who's, not in the industry or not a business professional, would she be able to understand this message? I say, would a 14-year-old be able to understand this message? If I'm confident that a smart 14-year-old would be able to understand my message, I know I've simplified it enough for most people to absorb it. Yeah, so just some questions to ask yourself. Is there jargon? Are there unnecessary words you can replace or cut out? Are there more clear descriptive words you can use? So like really go over your pitches or your points and ask yourself these questions. Are there any clear examples you can use to help further explain what you're saying? Which I'll give you an example in the next slide. And can a 14-year-old understand it? I think if you're able to ask yourself these questions honestly and answer honestly, then you're setting yourself up for success in this department.
Was it Hemingway who said, if I had more time, I'd write a shorter sentence?
I don't know. That's a good quote, though. I'm not sure. I know Albert Einstein said that if you can't explain something, I believe Einstein's quoted for this, for saying, if you can't explain something simply enough, you don't know it well.
And I agree that.
If you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. So you're really just breaking your idea down to its fundamental message, essentially, is what you're doing. So more people can understand and take it. So this is just, the exact same message, just distilled down. You're cutting out all the unnecessary words. This was a group that I worked with who ran a training business. And this was their original pitch, which really wasn't clear at all. If you see the pitch here, it says, our clients are able to reduce the complexity, costs, and time involved in delivering. They really didn't say what they did in their pitch. It's not simple. It's not clear. It's vague. So we reworked it. And what we reworked it to was this. I work with XYZ Training. We have software and computer programs that help retail firms train their employees. So a lot different than their original pitch. I'll give you another example. So number 2, retail firms use our software, or retail companies, retailers, whatever you want to say, use our software and programs to train their employees. Or number 1, we have software and computer programs. And then if you want, you can use an example just to help clarify that original point, just in case they didn't get it, if it was too general. For example, whenever Foot Locker hires a new sales rep, they use our programs to train them. Right. So now you know that this company, essentially what they do is they make and they sell online training programs that retail stores use. And that's it. So we just want to make it really simple and clear for people to understand our message. So just to sum everything up today, 5 key points of the fundamentals of being a more confident and engaging speaker is adopting that helping mindset, know how you're helping your audience, having that open body language, you're making eye contact with people, you're open, your shoulders aren't slumped. You're open with your message, you're gesturing if you feel that's natural to you. You're remembering names, you're asking questions, you're engaging people in the presentation, you can use their names. Having a conversational delivery with your tone and your language, using language that's familiar to us, and speaking simply. And if you can get these 5 points down, then I truly feel that you've got the basics and the fundamentals to be a much more effective speaker. And that's me.
So if people want to find out more, Max, where and want to get a hold of you, where can they go?
Yeah, so you can go to LinkedIn, Max Beaumont, add me, message me directly. You can email me, max@potatochipcommunications.com, max@potatochipcommunications.com. Message me on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help in any way I can. I do one-on-one coaching. I help people with their messaging, their pitches, the delivery of their messages, all different types of professionals. So, I go into organizations, I do seminars, trainings, I do talks on communication skills. So yeah, feel free, hit me up. I'm happy to help.
And thanks for taking the time today. And I wanted to clear up a little mistake on my end. It was Blaise Pascal who actually said in French, I would have had written a shorter letter if I had more time.
Oh, nice.
So thank you for taking the time today. I learned a lot. Hopefully the audience did. And I appreciate you being part of Startup Launch Online. And this will be up on our website by tomorrow morning. Thanks, Max.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Craig. See you guys. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Great to see you, buddy.
You too, man. See ya.